Hey everyone, welcome to the newest episode of On That Note with Parker Whirling. Today's guest joins me from Nashville, Tennessee. He's an incredibly talented retro soul pop singer-songwriter who has a new single out right now called Moonbeams. Before we get the episode started, please make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And don't forget to follow me at Parker Whirling and at onthatnote_podcast on Instagram. And on that note, please welcome Fulton Lee. I'm sitting here with Fulton Lee, a retro soul pop singer-songwriter from Nashville, Tennessee. He's got a new single out right now called Moonbeams that I heard on Spotify's Fresh Finds Indie playlist, and it was released August 20th. I usually like to start out my podcasts with asking about the writing and recording process of this song, of your newest single. So was there anything different about this single going into it, or maybe even the release process compared to your other releases?
Good question. Also, thank you so much for having me on. This is very exciting. So Moonbeams was definitely different from anything else in the sense that I wrote it with someone who I had never met before. His name is Pete Edens. He lives in Nashville. He's a producer, and I got connected with him through a mutual friend, and then we got together to do a co-write, just not knowing kind of what exactly we were going to write for or what kind of song we were going to write. And Moonbeams is just what ended up coming out, and happened really fast. Like, we had a Zoom hangout / write in May of 2021, and then we met in his studio twice in June, and that was all it took. It was just those 3 sessions, and the song was totally done, and then it came out in August. So usually, I've had songs take years, like literally a year or more to fully complete. But sometimes the flow is right and the chemistry is right between 2 people, and things just come together really naturally.
So was this just the writing, or was it writing and recording?
Writing and recording. So Pete basically came up with the chord progression for, and kind of the foundational sounds for the song, and I wrote melody and lyrics over that. And kind of as he was coming up with the instrumental and as I was coming up with the melody and lyrics, we were recording as we went. So it was all very kind of simultaneous,
Did it was it more enjoyable, or was it kind of hard at first to write with someone who you hadn't met before? What were some of the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, great question. It was, there have definitely been times where it is challenging to write with someone that you've never met. But it just so happens that with Pete, we just really clicked. Like, the moment I got on the Zoom call and first met him, there wasn't a whole lot of hey, nice to meet you. Where are you from? How long have you been doing music? It was kind of just yo, what's up? Let's create something. And I just kind of knew from that moment, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. I'm going to like this guy. We're going to work well together. And yeah, it was just one of those things where it was really, really easy, weirdly easy. And wouldn't have expected it. So
It's funny how good things can come easy. You feel like you have to put in a shit ton of effort and hard work into something to make it sound perfect, but sometimes it really is just letting it flow and trusting that, instead of trying to you shouldn't feel like you have to be banging your head against a wall for something to work. Sometimes it really is easy. And I think, when it comes to collaborating with people, that can really amplify the ease or the pain when it comes to writing and recording something. Because if you guys click like you did, then it just speeds up the process, because you can both, go back and forth and bounce ideas off each other very quickly. But if you're not aligned and have the same vision, then there's a good chance that you're going to spend a lot of time and energy banging your head against the wall trying to make something, work when it's not going to.
Right. Yeah, it's a tough balance. It's a tough balance because I've had songs that we just can't kind of get that last 10 to 20% on. And it does feel like you're banging your head against the wall. And sometimes those songs end up being great, once you finally do finish them. But man, when they just flow like this, there's like a real magic that's like contained in that chemistry. So yeah, there's pros and cons to both.
When you have to take something from 80% to 100 and it's maybe giving you some trouble, what are some ways that you work around that? Do you take time away from it to let it breathe? Do you ask others for their opinions on it? What do you usually do?
That is a great question. Yeah, so when we get to that spot where it's like we have 10 to 20% left, I feel like it's something that happens often. And I'm not sure why, but I think typically what we do is, I guess it's different for every song, but we definitely send it around kind of in our circle and get people's thoughts on it. Sometimes we'll bring it to like an outside producer and be like, hey, can you help us just put the finishing touches on this? And sometimes it's just time, like I have a song called Call You Mine that kind of halfway through the song, the whole vibe kind of changes and it goes from like a very stripped acoustic song to kind of like a more full arrangement. And for the first, that's an example of a song that took over a year to really get right. And for the first half of that song's life, that second half of the song never existed. There was a totally different section that finished the song out, and we never really felt like it was totally working. And it was one of those things where it was like, yeah, it's a complete idea, but it's not like fully happening. And we ended up, kind of going back to the drawing board a little bit on the song completely. And the second half of that song ended up taking a totally different shape, totally different direction. And now it's like, it had to be the section that it is, it's like the perfect thing that it needed. But it took that like banging the head against the wall to realize, I don't think this section is the section.
Yeah, it's weird how that can be like kind of right under your nose in a way, the solution to what's going on, and out of nowhere it just presents itself.
Right. Yep.
And it's like you can't control it either. You can't control when it pops up. It's almost like it's its own living being, a song or even a melody or something. It's like I almost think of it like being a radio antenna into like this ether world where these things exist, and you can like beg and plead for this thing to come through, and it's really on its own time.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I think of I'll have an impression of a melody, like I'll hear maybe like a chord progression, and some deep like cosmic part of me is like, I can hear the perfect melody for this progression, but I don't know what it is. But like I can kind of hear it. Like
Hmm.
it's like that melody already exists and I just have to like uncover it as opposed to like create it from scratch, it's already there. I just have to like somehow find it.
You like decode it, like it's all jumbled up. Like you have the puzzle pieces, but it's not everything is quite put together yet.
Right. And I feel like that's the easiest part for me is like specifically melody writing. Like that's something that comes super natural for me. But once the melody is fully written, the lyrics are fully written, the that like the production, getting the production to a fully complete place, that's where I'm always like, you know, have to discipline myself to like really like keep trying things, keep taking things away, keep adding things, cut the fat, try new ideas, because that's like, I don't know why certain things come more natural than others, but um, yeah, the melodies are always natural for me.
What are some of the bigger takeaways you've had over the years when it comes to production, like knowing yourself and knowing some things you maybe tend to do and you want to like break that cycle, or some things that in general you used to do that you don't do anymore because you find it doesn't really suit you anymore?
Wow. Yeah. I would say, you know, I think I have a tendency with production, if I feel like it's not complete, I just add things. So I just add another layer. I add, another kind of new sound or new part to keep things interesting. And sometimes instead of just adding layers on top of what's there, it's better to change the layers that are there. Because if it's not working, it might not be that it needs another layer. It might mean that the layers that are there aren't as quality as they could be.
Mm.
And it took me a long time to kind of like, and sometimes it's even taking away layers, you know, uh, and just really looking at what you have and saying, is every part of this strong, or are there parts of it that are kind of there to be like a filler? Because I think that if every part of a track is strong and like if it were isolated, it could be a strong part. I think that's when you're kind of on the right track. So yeah, that's one big thing, but I'm still very much in the process of figuring that out. I lean on other people a lot for that kind of production stuff.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with taking things away that are filler, where it can be hard when you're starting. At least for me, it was because something about adding a bunch of stuff made me think I was doing something, right? Like, oh, I'm working on it. And you're like, well, are you working hard or are you working smart here? Because maybe you don't need to be doing all this. Maybe you're trying to make up for something. And there's nothing wrong with having a song that's like 5 tracks if everything is perfect. But if you have 40 tracks and everything is like okay, it's probably not going to hit as the same as those 5 tracks. And that kind of reminds me, I know you're a fan of Kanye West.
I was just thinking, yeah, as soon as you said that, I thought Kanye West.
Oh, really? That's funny. I'm curious what you were thinking exactly, because my mind went to, I just finished the Dissect podcast season where he talks about Yeezus, and Kanye said he took these songs to Rick Rubin, and he was like, Rick Rubin's not a producer, he's a reducer. He just takes all the filler out. And I was like, whoa, that's a great quote. That's a great way to think of it. So that kind of reminded me of what we were just talking about right now.
Yeah, as soon as you said, or as soon as you were talking about like having 5 tracks instead of 40, Kanye immediately came to mind, because I always noticed that about his stuff is like on the majority of his tracks, like you can count on both hands the amount of like layers that you're hearing. He's so straightforward.
Yeah,
And it's
especially on
something,
an album like Yeezus, I think.
right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you listen to an album like Jesus, it's like every track in a song is so bold. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing that's like passive or like understated. Everything has its own personality. Every synth part, every drum part has its own personality, and like that's what you want. He's so good at that.
Yeah, I've been really getting back into his stuff, mainly Donda, of course, because it just came out. But listening to that has really inspired me to paint with broad brushstrokes, you know, and not be. I mean, I like the idea of things that are like, I don't know, frills, like things that you wouldn't maybe notice until like a few listens in. But I do think even those, like, you still have to hold to the same principle of, is it supporting everything, or is it there because, I don't know, maybe there's some other reason subconsciously behind it? And when that happens, for me, I just mute the track and listen to the whole thing. I'm like, did it sound just as good? So for you, how do you approach things like lyrics? Because I know that you said on this interview that you prefer that you write all the lyrics, whereas everything else you are down to collaborate.
Yeah, I honestly, I mean, I don't know that I've ever released a song under my name that I have collaborated on lyrics with. I've written songs for other things, or I've written songs that haven't made it to like a full blown Fulton Lee release where I've collaborated with lyrics with other people. Um, and I think it's great and fun. I think it's a little. I haven't quite learned how to be like fully personal with lyrics when I'm collaborating with other people. Because if a lyric is gonna like really be reflective of what I'm going through, I feel like I need time to kind of like really think about what I'm going through and like
Yeah.
what I feel. And I think when you collaborate, a lot of times it's kind of like, "Ooh, that was a cool word. Ooh, that was a cool melody." Like, things kind of move quickly, which is one of the beautiful benefits of collaborating. But with lyrics, I think I like am slower than is appropriate for a collaboration.
Interesting.
So that's part of probably why I do that. But yeah, I'm also definitely becoming more open to collaboration in that kind of thing, things that are more close to the heart. So yeah, who knows? I hope to develop that skill more, but as of now, yeah, I'm still figuring it out.
Lyrics have always been the thing that I've struggled with the most, I think, because once I first started feeling like I found my like the content I wanted to talk about, or like the themes I wanted to talk about, I really stuck with that for a while. And then I kind of realized I wasn't being as personal as I should be on some of these songs. And I kind of just, like you were saying, like when you're collaborating with somebody, it's like, oh, that's a cool phrase. Like maybe we should just throw that in there and work with it. Instead of writing about specific things in my life. And, there's nothing wrong with either one of those, but in general, I think I've started to do that, and it starts to feel more and more cathartic and like I'm discovering my own thought process behind something that happened. And it's also like, it's got to take me a couple months after this event or after this series of events to really process what happened. I can't just write a song right after this thing happened, although I wish I could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I always think that the best lyrics, or at least for me, I'm always at my best when I'm writing lyrics that feel like I'm trying to describe something that's indescribable. So, like, because that's what art is for, to kind of
Mm-hmm.
try and like represent something that's not articulable or not possible to represent in any kind of like straightforward way. You have to do it in a way that's more abstract. And when I can find like a feeling or some type of nostalgia or some type of like conundrum or emotion within me that is just too complex and profound for me to really just describe directly, if I can identify that kind of feeling, that's when I'm like, oh, I can write great lyrics about this, because it has to be artful in order for me to truly describe it, because it's too profound to just like, write an article about it, like write an essay.
Yeah, it's not as logical.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like, it's like trying to describe a color that you've never seen. Like if you had never seen the color purple, it's like, how am I going to describe? It's kind of like blue and red mixed, but like that's
It's
the
like, how
best
much
I
does
could
that
do.
really help you?
Right.
That's interesting. How do you? I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a good follow up, because I like what you're talking about this feeling that comes and it's undefinable. Do you feel like you can feel it coming before it hits, or is it spur of the moment, or is it different every time?
It's like if I go through something in life and I have a very complex emotional reaction or just feeling about that thing, um, and when I really look at the emotion, I'm like, man, that's deep. Like, there's a lot to that. I don't know that I could just really just describe what I'm feeling. Those are the things that I'm like, okay, this feeling is something I could write something beautiful about because it's very profound. Um, like, I have a 1-year-old daughter, and if I tried to describe to somebody what it feels like to have a baby, like, it's like you
Right.
can't. And so a feeling like that is it's so like infinitely dimensional that I feel like it's just a fertile soil for writing great lyrics because it's already exists outside kind of the articulable realm.
That's such a cool way of putting it. Makes me think about it in a different way for sure. Do you have a favorite part of the creative process, whether that be the writing, the recording, the even the release or music video side of things?
Definitely it's like the very beginning of the idea. That's my favorite part for
Mm,
sure.
like the spark that gets you going.
Yeah, like coming up with a chord progression that feels amazing and then like finding a great melody for it. That's my favorite part, without a doubt. Everything else is like everything else is just me trying to get that initial moment out into the world. I'm just
Hmm.
trying to dress that initial moment up in a way that, is professional and digestible and accessible because that initial seed is what it's all about, I think.
That answer makes total sense for you because every song that you have is very hook driven. Like everything is so catchy, and that totally makes sense. And I've talked to a good handful of artists now and asked that question to a few, and it's funny because it made me realize, for me, maybe there's a bunch of sparks. Like there is that initial spark that you enjoy when you start that thing where you're like, oh, whoa, like this is going somewhere. And then it can kind of, you know, after you finish it, you might start going on the decline because you're like, okay, well, you just now that moment's over. But then you start the recording, and that spark could come back when this synth line comes in that you didn't expect would ever be in the song, but suddenly it makes it. And then same thing with the music video. You can like kind of have a spark when you have the idea, but then maybe it's a slog again because you got to deal with all the logistics of making a music video. But then you see it for the first time and you're like, oh shit. And then you get that spark comes back.
Right. Totally. Totally. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I definitely relate to that for sure. There's sparks all along the way.
It's hard to remember that when you're in the slog part of it, but you just got to remember that that spark will come back, and if it's not, you got to honor that and understand and try to think about why is it not coming back and do something about it to get there again.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true, man. I have a song that will probably come out this year that, and this is one of those songs that I probably wrote this 3.5 years ago.
Oh
And,
wow.
it's just for whatever reason, we just always had other songs kind of ahead of it in the queue. Um, but we're finally fleshing it out. And probably part of the reason why we took so long is because it has just been challenging to take the core of the song and turn it into a full production. Um, I don't not sure why. The song's pretty straightforward, but it's kind of like disco-y
Hmm.
vibes, and we're making a pretty like large and layered arrangement, and it's hard to nail that. And it's one of those that has been at that 80-90% mark for a couple months, and I'm like, holy shit, like so, what, like man, because it's one of those where I feel like that core, like the melody, the kind of concept of the song is super strong, but we got to dress it up in a way that really like complements and fully honors the core of it, and it's not quite there. And I just recently showed it to my sister, who is I'm close to and has shares a lot of musical taste with me, and she was super into what we have so far. She understood that it wasn't complete, but she was really into, and it's bam, it's oh yeah, I love this song. I forgot, because I've been hating this song for 4 months.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
showing
it's
it to
spark.
someone else who loves it reminds you that you loved it at one point.
Yes, yeah, and all of a sudden I can hear again. Oh yeah, that moment is magical. I forgot, totally forgot. I've resented that moment because I can't figure out how to fully put the right pieces around it.
It's funny how hearing it with someone in the room immediately can make you feel excited about it, or before they say anything, you're like, oh my God, I should not have shown them this right now.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I've tell people I have no idea whether I like a song until I play it for somebody and
Wow.
sit in the room with them, because I'll be pumped by myself about the initial idea of a song and be really rocking, and then as soon as I'm yo, homies, come check this out, and as soon as I hit play, I'm dude, this song blows. I didn't even know, before
Yeah.
they even say anything.
Yeah, and they can even be like, "Yo, man, this is sick." You're like, "Don't lie to me
Right?
right now." That's hilarious. I'd love to ask you about your "Follow the Leader" music video, because probably my favorite song by you. I don't know why it hits so different for me, but that one is just so catchy. It feels very summery, and I love that when the drums come in, when they first come in, it just feels so good. And the video is great too. It's very expressive, and it just matches the tone so much. So how was your experience making this music video, and what have you learned over the years of doing visuals for your songs?
Such great questions. Yeah, it's just funny, man. It's cool to hear you say that, because Follow the Leaders, when we were, had made that and were about to release it, and when we released it, even still to this day, I think it might be my favorite song that we've ever released. But and I was expecting it to have that same reception, and I don't feel like it did. I don't feel like people didn't like the song, but
Right.
sometimes you release a song and it's people that you don't even know, or that haven't even been following your music, or you didn't know were following your music, will reach out and be yo, this is your best song. And sometimes 50 different people will do that, and you're wow, this is my best song.
Yeah. You're like, really, this one?
Right. That's what it was like for Moonbeams, ironically. That was one where it was the support was overwhelming. And I expected that for Follow the Leader, but it totally was not that way. And that's totally great and fine, nothing wrong with that. But it's cool to hear you say that, because it's been my favorite for always.
Yeah.
And
What about it makes it your favorite?
I feel like I really hear music in terms of aesthetic, if you will. I relate to music less through lyrics, less through even genre, or even vocal delivery or performance, but the way it all comes together and kind of creates a color, or creates kind of a world. If you listen to Billie Eilish's latest album, it's very it's almost old school, 1940s musical kind of sound. And when I hear those melodies and I hear the production, I'm in that world. I feel that I'm in a 1940s New York City with a street light in the dark. I feel that.
In a speakeasy or something.
Is exactly. So I don't know why, but that kind of world building around music is how I relate to music, and I feel like Follow the Leader creates a world that I think is really dope and that I don't think I've ever heard before. Like it to me, that song is like a Dr. Seuss type of world, and like is very colorful and very like childlike and playful, and also like really danceable. And yeah, it hits me in my core, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
one thing I noticed that could be like, I mean, I don't know if this was a conscious choice or not, but there's no crash cymbal at all, and you like use the kids' voices almost as like almost as a replacement for that. I'm like, that's so dope. Like that's so unique, and it adds to the you know, uh childlike version, or what's the word? Just the sense of it to this song. And just little things like that. I'm also like, I don't know why I don't like crash cymbals like in my own songs. I don't even mean to do it. It's just I realize at the end of it, I'm like, oh, I don't have crashes in any of my songs, and I don't know why. But that's why I probably noticed it. It's because I like have an affinity towards that.
totally. Yeah, I never noticed that either, but I can say the same about my music. There are very little crash cymbals. Um, yeah, like that moment where the kids scream as the drums come in, like that's one of my favorite moments, you know, that I've ever been a part of. Like I think it's so dope.
It's so
So,
cool. So, do
thank you,
you have
man.
any people or any advice for people regarding doing your own music videos? Like, how you would, any advice you'd give to like your former self when it comes to doing a music video?
Well, I'm in such a lucky position because my manager is a videographer. And
Perfect.
yeah, so he's, you know, he does management stuff for me, and we work together on, you know, the strategic side of our brand and all that stuff. But then he also will do photo video stuff for me, and he's just a super talented guy and has his own career as a videographer, you know, outside of my brand. And yeah, so he's the only person I've worked with for music videos, and we've only shot two. One of them isn't even out, and I don't know if it will be. But so I don't have a ton of experience with it, but and I know that a lot of people do it a lot of different ways. You know, so a lot of music videos are very like you have a shot list before you start shooting. It's like every kind of scene or every setting and every movement is like very pre-planned. But everything that I've done music video wise has been very improvisational. And so we choose the outfits and we choose the settings, and that's kind of it. And then we just show up and just put the song on and just do whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
and just have fun.
yeah, like, you know, I put on these wacky red and white overalls, and then we went to a playground with a bunch of kids running around, and oh man, I was just making a complete idiot of myself in front of all of these 6-year-olds and all of their parents. I was like up on the slide, like dancing with my mic stand. It was difficult for
I'm sure
me.
that takes a lot of internal courage.
Yeah, I'm sure it looks that way outwardly, but inwardly, I was cringing so deeply that I was like a shriveled piece of fruit or something.
Well, it really came through. Like I said, it's very expressive. It looks like you're totally confident, and it's funny to hear that inside you were like just not feeling it. And I think that's so important for people to know is
Yeah,
that like you're not gonna always feel comfortable doing this stuff, and you probably most likely will not, especially when you're starting out because it's so new and it's unfamiliar territory. But that's okay. Like there's been so many times where less so doing a music video and more during like a recording process where I'm like, I'm really stoked on something, and then I realize I'm like, how are people gonna think about this? And it scares me. But the good thing is I know that that's like a barometer for, okay, I probably should put this out if it scares me.
So true, man. That is so true. Yeah, I mean, the more artists can stick to their vision without compromise, that's what everybody wins when artists do that.
Everybody wins. And what's funny is um, sometimes, I think about compromise. I think of external forces like, a label or the audience, what you think they'll think. But it's really like there's a lot of internal compromise that you have to deal with during the creation process.
Yeah, the moment that you described is exactly it, where you're like, maybe it has to do with like the delivery of your vocals or the delivery of any part for that matter, and maybe you are trying something a little bit scary. Maybe you're like taking a risk with your performance or even with your lyrics, and it feels right to you. It feels good. It feels exciting, and then you think like, oof, but that might not be very accessible, right? Or
Yeah.
that might put some people off, and that's the crucial moment.
Yeah, for real. That is like the tipping point. Like, what are you going to do? The fork in the road.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Well, that's going to take us over to the last 5 here, where I'm just going to ask you 5 questions and we'll be done.
Sweet.
All right, number 1, in the studio or playing live?
Oh boy. Um. As just a vocal performer, live.
Yeah.
No question. But just in terms of like my favorite, I love writing probably a little more than I love performing. So if that's the question, then it's the opposite.
Yeah. Well, the energy you get playing live is unlike anything else, but it's like the slow burn great feelings that you get during the recording process that are really what rival that. So maybe the playing live is like that immediate gratification.
That's a great question because I don't know that I could ever give either one up. Like I gotta have both. I feel myself like withering when I don't have one of them.
Yeah, it's that's a fun one to ask because it's pretty 50-50. A lot of people are torn. Well, no, actually, not a lot of people are torn, but some people like it takes a second for you to answer. Some people, they have no hesitation. They totally know what it is. And it really is 50-50. Like half the people I've asked that say in the studio and the other half say playing live. So that's kind of fun to see what someone says because it's never guaranteed one or the other.
Totally.
So question number 2 is, what do you think is a perfect album front to back?
Oh, that one's easy. Blonde by Frank Ocean.
Oh, shit. You're talking my language, dude. That's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Yeah, that is like head and shoulders number 1 album that has ever or will ever exist in my book. It like is deeply special to me. I think that it is the most sophisticated like body of music that exists.
Wow, those are high praise. And I can't disagree with you. It's in my top 5. I don't know if I could ever pick a number 1. That's like, that would just be so hard. But as far as like talk about world building, that album is insane.
Exactly.
Like, it takes you so many different places in this world. Each song is like looking into the past memory of someone who you know very well, but you also don't know at all, and you constantly learn about every time you listen.
Right. Oh man. Yeah, I mean, there are emotions that exist in that song or in that album that I just don't. To me it's literally like a new color that doesn't exist. That's what that album is to me. It's like he just did something new. And I mean, just like what we've been talking about, it's so minimal. Like
Nikes, dude. That song is a synth, a bass, and a drum line, and then like a very easy 808, and then his voice.
Right. Yeah, and it is like absolutely captivating from start to finish somehow.
Yeah. That album, I mean, I really liked it when I first heard it, but it did not I wasn't sure how to feel about it. Like I liked it, And then, I mean, 5 years later, now it's one of my favorite albums of all time. It's funny how your favorite albums can be a slow burn at first.
Yeah. And that's exactly why you can't compromise, because
Mm,
it's probably why the reason, one of the reasons why it probably doesn't hit you like that on your first listen. I had a similar experience, is because he made decisions in all kinds of different areas of the music, production, songwriting, performance, that are extremely bold, extremely expressive, and are really, really true to his unique vision, but that are not like super accessible, don't fit into like a very digestible formula as far as a listener is concerned. And that's why it's so amazing. But I'm sure he had lots of opportunities to second guess.
yeah, I'm sure he did. I mean, I remember the first few times listening to it. I mean, maybe even for the whole first year I was listening to it, I had my own ideas of what he should have done differently to satisfy my own, I don't know, my own needs. And one was like, I just didn't like how long he had the high pitched voice at the beginning of Nikes. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
why is it going on this long? And now I'm like, it's the perfect amount of time. I don't know why. I don't know what changed. And then I always thought Pink and White should have been like the first song, but it's
Wow.
like it doesn't. It hits so much different. It being the third song, or at least it should have been in front of Nikes, or in front of Ivy, which by the way, like who would have thought a song like Ivy would ever be on a Frank Ocean album after something like Channel Orange? Like Ivy sounds nothing like any of that.
Right. Totally.
Yeah, I can talk about that all day, but we probably
Me
should
too.
move on to the next one, which is who's your dream artist or producer to work with?
Hmm. Um. Mm. Dream artist or producer to work with. Oh, honestly, it might be this artist called Remy Wolf. Are you
Yeah,
familiar?
yeah, dude, she's sick.
Yeah, She's obviously like kind of a little bit newer. She's been around for a good few years, but yeah, I mean, a year ago, if you had asked me that, it would have been totally different. I recently discovered her maybe 6 months ago, and she is one of my like absolute top inspirations right now. I think that I just posted an Instagram story like right before we got on saying that I think she's like at the top of new music coming out right now. I think she's like the queen.
Yeah,
Um,
she
and
really
she
like shows her personality so much in her songs. Like it just makes sense.
exactly, the personality is like, oh, it's like if you've ever had like a rush of creative energy, like sometimes you just get hit with like a wave of like you need to express yourself somehow. And a lot of times you sit down and write a song, or you write you make a beat or some type of instrumental or whatever. But sometimes that rush of creative energy is so strong that for me, it's like writing a song is like, that's like going for a walk when I want to be sprinting, you know,
Yeah,
because it takes time. I have to like, really think about, the chords that I'm using and the lyrics. And what I really want to do is just like flail and dance and yell and like express, because there's so much energy in what I'm feeling. And that is exactly what Remy Wolf's music does. It's like a fire hose of just her personality and her like creative energy and her expression. And it's so direct. It's just
yeah,
like you are seeing directly into her mind or her creative self, and it's like really, really powerful. And of course it's all like kind of groove based, which is the world I lived in as well. So to be able to work with her, I think would change me.
I could totally see that. I think y'all's music has very similar qualities to it, especially a song like "Follow the Leader." That one kind of gives me some Remy Wolf vibes, but her stuff is like, it's crazy how like it's so colorful. It's like every color you can imagine in one song, and it's so bright sounding. A couple people I thought of were Still Woozy. I feel like y'all
Yeah,
would do some great stuff together. And
yeah, absolutely.
and just to throw out one of the queens, Taylor Swift. because why not?
Yeah, man, I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan.
She's
She's
amazing.
amazing. She
She's a
totally
great
is.
person. I always got to brag on my best friend Valeria because she's a photographer and she did all the like everything for Lover, that album.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Visually? Wow.
visually, yeah. So she took the album cover, she took like all the promo photos. It's nuts.
I want to look at that album cover real fast.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that album cover is such a beautiful. Oh, yeah. With like the pink and blue clouds.
Mhm, mhm.
Oh, man.
And it was her idea to put the eye, or not the eye, the heart around the eye.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Oh, that's so dope.
Yeah, we like cried when we find out. Actually, she couldn't tell anybody for like
Right.
a year and a half or 2 years because crazy NDAs. But then when once we knew, we were like crying. It's insane that she got to do that.
That is insane. That image is the perfect representation of the music on that album.
I totally agree, and I'm probably biased because of her, but I love that album so much. Like
Me too.
I just love the how colorful it is, and it makes sense she did that because Valeria's a very colorful person. But that just the songs like are so groovy, and they almost sound futuristic to a way. I feel like maybe some of the singles weren't as much, but like all of the other songs to me sounded very like just so different for anyone, especially someone like Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I loved the production and the songwriting. It might be my favorite T Swift album, honestly.
Yeah.
Death by a Thousand Cuts is like
Yes,
just
dude, the piano things on there,
good
it's
lord.
crazy. I love
Yeah.
the production on that. Totally agree. But question number 4 is, what's your musical rotation right now?
Big Remy Wolf, big time Remy Wolf.
Nice.
She's releasing a lot of music right now because she has an album coming out like next
Right.
month, and I'm just absolutely drinking it in.
I love that. Yeah, she put out, what were the 2 new songs she just did?
She did. I have them right here. Oh, it's Gorilla and Sexy Villain. Oh,
Yeah.
so good.
Gorilla's music video is great too.
Yeah, her music videos are hilarious. But also, it's cool that you say that. I'm listening to a lot of Still Woozy. His album is
Oh, there you
absolutely like beautiful. It is
go.
unbelievable. Also, Nordista Freeze. Are you familiar with Nordista Freeze?
I know that name, but no, I don't know.
He's
Is it
he's a
guy?
Nashville
Okay.
guy.
Okay, cool.
He just released an album that's phenomenal. He's a buddy of mine, but
Oh,
yeah,
very cool.
those are my rotations for sure.
Nice. Nordista Freeze. I'll have to check him out. That sounds really cool.
Check him out for sure. It's awesome.
All right, and the last question here is, it's funny because I usually would ask this question to somebody I know is a Frank Ocean fan, but you said it's like you said it was your favorite album. I usually go Channel Orange or Blonde. But
Is that like the question?
I ask a lot of people who I know ahead of time are Frank Ocean fans because you said in another interview that you were a Frank Ocean fan. So I was like, all right. But then you were like, favorite album of all time. Like, okay, I can't ask that. Let's switch it up. But the one I was going to say is, if you had to choose, one's got to go, one's got to stay. Frank Ocean or Wolfpack?
Oh my god.
And they're so different.
Yeah, you really did your homework because, those are my 2 favorite artists of all time. I mean, yeah, they're just like completely different universes. Wolfpack and Frank Ocean. That's like, which one of your children do you love more? Which one of your parents do you love more? Because those are my parents for sure.
Right.
It's weird because Fulton Lee, the brand and the music, just would not exist flat out without Wolfpack. I just wouldn't exist. But Fulton Lee, the human being, might not exist without Frank Ocean.
Wow.
Just because like Blonde was such a huge part of like some really, really difficult and traumatic seasons of life for me that it's so deeply special that I could never dispense with Frank. So Wolfpack would have to go.
Oh, wow. I like the reasoning behind it, though. That's pretty cool because you can always still make music, but you can't not be a person getting through things.
Exactly. Yep. I would just have to find another way to like discover the funk if Wolfpack wasn't around.
Yeah. Or maybe you would be doing more R&B. Who knows?
Yeah. Either way, at least I'd be alive.
Yeah. I love how you said Frank, like you said Blonde instead of all the Frank Ocean's music. So really, it's like just Blonde itself beats
Yeah.
Wolfpack.
Right. Yeah. You know, I love Channel Orange. I think it's amazing, but to me it doesn't have that like cosmic like groundbreaking quality to it. And like if if Blonde didn't exist, Frank Ocean would just kind of be like a guy that I'm into. He wouldn't be like the man to me. But also the singles that have come out since Blonde, specifically Lens, I think Lens has the same punch that Blonde does.
I need to go back and listen to that one because that one was I only listened to it a few times. I listen to Chanel all the time and in my room and biking. But Lens was one I didn't really pay attention to, so I got to go back and listen to that one.
Yeah, I mean, all those other ones are great too. Biking and Chanel and even Provider. Those are all
Provider was awesome.
Phenomenal. I mean, those are amazing, amazing tracks. But Lens has that like deep cuts you to your heart quality to me anyway.
That's funny what you said about Channel Orange versus Blonde. It feels like, I mean, I'm not going to say Channel Orange is not good. It's amazing. But it feels like it was made by a really talented human being, and Blonde feels like it was made by like God, like the universe.
Yes, that's exactly how I feel. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, it's like Blonde was like gifted to Earth by an angel.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
So didn't like come just
everyone
from Frank.
Get through shit.
Exactly. Like Blonde has always existed since the beginning of time. It just so happens that manifested in 2016.
Yeah. Man, now I'm going to have to go listen to it as soon as we're done.
Good luck.
I know. I'm going to be crying in the car on the way to work.
It'll ruin your day.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Fulton Lee, thank you for joining me for an episode of On That Note. It's been so awesome getting to talk with you about your creative process and, freak out about Frank Ocean together. Everybody needs to go listen to Moonbeams, your newest single, on all streaming platforms now. And once again, thank you for coming on the show, man. It's been awesome talking with you.
Absolutely, dude. This was like one of the more fun conversations I have had in a long time.
So I appreciate that.
Let me take a picture of what we're doing. Yeehaw! Cool.
Very sick. Awesome.
Thanks
man.
So much, dude.
Yeah, a great talking to you. And this episode should be coming out soon, so I'll let you know.
Sweet.
Awesome, dude. I'll talk to you later.
Peace out.
Thank you again for joining me for another episode of On That Note with Parker Whirling. If you haven't yet, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, and you can even leave a comment down below to let me know who you're listening to. On that note, I'll see you guys next time.